I'm really well. Welcome back to Adventures of the Black Belt Sommelier. I'm really excited to tell you about this bottle of wine that I opened last night. I guess I'm so excited to tell you about it. I forgot to introduce the podcast. Um, I had dinner with some good friends last night, and one of the group is a vegetarian, so we had a vegetarian dinner, which was an interesting change of pace. The main course was red pepper stuffed with uh, goat cheese and capers. And the hostess asked me what kind of wine I would recommend that she serve with this dish. Would a Pinot Noir be good? And I said, well, I think because of the capers, a Rhone Valley red wine would be better. And I actually have a bottle that'll be perfect, so I'll bring it. It was in 1998. Pierre Usseglio, that's spelled Usseglio, Chateauneuf du Pape, Cuvee de Mont Aieul, that I brought. Um, this bottle of wine illustrates in great detail why we have wine cellars and why we let a wine age and why we buy wine from great vintages and why we buy wine from great producers. Because this bottle of wine at 26 years old was absolutely breathtaking. Now, 1998 is a great vintage, one of the best vintages ever in the Southern Rhone Valley. Um, Pierre Celio's wines are extraordinary. The single vineyard, the Cuvee Montalia, is in a great vintage, a great wine. Um, I used a wine opening tool called a Durand to open it because sometimes with a 26-year-old wine, the cork can be an issue. If you open much wine that I would say is more than 20 years old, you really should have a Durand. It combines Asso with a traditional corkscrew. So you put the screw down in the cork, and then you put the prongs of the Asso down each side through the holder of the screw down each side of the cork, and it's no fail. It pulls the whole cork out in one piece every time because the prongs hold the cork together, and the screw pulls the cork out. Um, One thing you can do sometimes with really old wines is to take a warm cloth and hold it around the neck of the bottle. It'll loosen the cork up a little bit. That helps too. The cork came out in one piece. It would have anyway, probably, but it was in perfect condition. And with old wines like this, it's all about the cork. That's why every bottle's different. As one of my mentors in wine told me years ago, with old wines, there are no great wines, there are only great bottles because every bottle is different because every cork is different. You're lucky and the cork is really excellent, and the chances of the wine being enjoyable are greatly enhanced. So, 26-year-old Chateauneuf, very, very high quality Chateauneuf Pape from a very great vintage. And then, you open it. I told the hostess to have a backup in case it wasn't up to snuff. She had a 2017 Chateau Saint Combe Gigondas as a backup, which would have been lovely, but wouldn't have been nearly what this was. Um, it when I first opened it had a tiniest bit of volatile acidity, but that blew off fairly quickly. And then it was the most, just everything you could ever hope a mature, great vintage, great producer, great bottling Chateauneuf du Pape could be. The tannins, of course, were completely resolved. So it was very soft in the mouth, very round and rich. Had the classic bouquet de gris of the Southern Rhone, the lavender, thyme, and rosemary was in abundance. It was very full bodied. It kind of was really interesting. Kind of every sip I took, there were five of us, so we got about 5 ounces each. It didn't have a lot of sediment, interestingly, but so we got about 5 ounces each. I kept going back to it. I would have a sip, 5 minutes later, I have another sip. 5 minutes later, I have another sip. Every time I tasted it, it was like a different wine. When I first poured it, the tannins, there wasn't the least bit of tannins, but as it developed in the glass, the tannins became more pronounced. I don't understand why that would be the case, but they did. Um, and one sip it would be all about the fruit, and the next sip it would be all about that bouquet de Garrigue, and the next sip it would be more about the tannin, and the next sip it would be something else entirely. It was in fact perfect with the dish. Um, and I probably sipped mine. I didn't want to waste it, so I wanted to enjoy it to its utmost capability. So I probably sipped over it over the course of an hour or so. Um, After an hour, it's still just absolutely glorious. This wine is not the least bit tired. It is. I would say this bottle on this night, if we drank this bottle of wine on the perfect night for it, I think not only is it like in 2024 perfectly mature, I think last night it was as good as it has ever been, better than it's ever been, and better than it's ever going to be. I think we drank it on absolutely the perfect night to drink this. So, this is why you have wine. This is why we have wine cellars. This is why we have more than a few bottles of wine. This is why we let wine age. This is why we buy wine from good producers. This is why we buy wine from great vintages. This is why we buy wine from good vineyards, because then you have the capability of having an experience like this. And trust me, it is worth all the effort that it takes and the investment that it takes, because then you have something. Then you get to share something like this bottle of wine with people you care about, like my close friends that I had dinner with last night. That, you know, that you have this moment where you're all together and the food's perfect and the wine's perfect and you love each other and you love the moment and you love, this magic time that's been created by your friendship and the food that the hostess and her husband prepared and this glorious, glorious bottle of wine. That doesn't happen with 3-year-old, you know, Sonoma Coast, Sonoma Cabernet Sauvignon. It just doesn't. I mean, it can happen with a Sonoma wine. It just doesn't happen when it's 3 years old. It doesn't happen if it's not great vintage. It doesn't happen if it's not great winemaker. It doesn't happen if it's not a great vineyard. And that happens when you have a wine cellar, so you can store wine properly and give it time to develop into something like this bottle of wine that we opened last night, which was absolutely, absolutely magnificent at 26 years old. And I just feel so lucky to have shared it, to have enjoyed it with my friends last night, because they were a group of people that, really, really appreciated how special it was. Thank you for tuning. And by the way, I think I just checked. Zacky's has it for auction for $50 a bottle. Now, auction wines are sometimes, you know, you never know. But if you can buy this bottle of wine for $50, I would buy however much they have. I'd buy it because it will be the best $50 bottle of wine you ever tasted. If it's as good, if the bottles you buy are as good as the one I had last night, it will be very, very special indeed, and certainly worth several multiples of $50 a bottle. Thank you for tuning in for Adventures of a Black Malt Sommelier. We appreciate it more than you can imagine.